I know of nothing in this country, not our churches, not our companies, not our universities. I know of nothing that has the potential to bring us together the way golf does.
Well, Fred, big week last week with the U.S. Junior Amateur, and it was at your home club, Trinity Forest. What are your thoughts on that? Just kind of reflecting on the week that was, bringing a high-level championship to Dallas, especially as USGA president.
Yeah, well, last week was kind of a dream week for me. It's a dream come true. You know, we say a lot like the work we do should take you closer to the life you want and the people you love. And last week was kind of surreal for me because my USGA family all came to my hometown, to my home club. And in fact, what made it really special was my journey in golf began at Trinity Forest. Trinity Forest, we believe, is this wonderful oasis for elite championship golf here in Dallas. So it was wonderful to have the best juniors in the world come to Dallas and get to test their skills on our championship golf course. And so I thought last week was really well done.
As USGA president, what was your role in bringing that tournament here? And then even if not the president role, but just being part of the USGA and being part of Trinity Forest, what was kind of your role in making that a reality?
Yeah, so for me, it was kind of full circle. My journey in golf started at Trinity Forest. At the Beck Group, which is my day job, we were called in by a small group of leaders to help with the construction of the facilities at Trinity Forest, and that led into being really engaged in the club and eventually taking on some leadership roles at the club. And so because of that, one of the members of the club nominated me for the board of the USGA. And then once I got on the board, I became the championship chair, and the championship committee is responsible for selecting where our sites for our golf tournaments or championships. And so it was an easy match because the USGA with its championships try to choose elite golf courses that can test all 14 clubs in the kids' bags and also test the 15th, which is the club between their ears. And we just thought that Trinity Forest was a wonderful place to do that. And moreover, Dallas is such a hot bed for golf. North Texas in general has produced so many golf champions that we thought it was time to bring a championship of that caliber back to North Texas. And of course, Trinity Forest being a new modern golf facility was just the wonderful place to do it. So my role was sort of twofold. One, understanding the club and the ambitions of the club. And then two, being the championship chair of the USGA allowed me to understand what the USGA was looking for. So as you could say, it was kind of a match made in heaven. And I thought last week kind of showed that.
You mentioned being on the championship committee and site selection specifically. The U.S. Open at the top championship, those sites are pretty well planned out going forward. The Rota seems to be pretty much those very traditional historic courses. But how does a course like Trinity Forest kind of fit into the future of USGA championships, either at the junior amateur, the main amateur, mid-am, events like that? Like, why is it important for a course like Trinity Forest to be part of that championship rotation or part of that site selection?
Yeah, so with the U.S. Open, we think it's really important. In fact, we did a survey amongst the players, and one of the things we heard from our best professional players, it's really important where you win your U.S. Open. And a lot of what makes it important is the connection to history. And you can't buy history, you have to earn history. And just like the players go on their journeys, from elite juniors to college players to young professionals to earning the right one day to win a major championship, we think golf courses need to go on their journey too. And so at Trinity Forest and courses like Trinity Forest have to get started along that sort of journey to the elite championships. And so the junior amateur is a wonderful way to test the golf course to see if it can stand up to the best players in the game, if whether the actual architecture can test all of the skills. And so I predict in the future that Trinity Forest will continue to go on that journey, maybe hosting other amateur championships. Look, we had an opportunity at Trinity Forest to host a few Byron Nelsons. And it became clear that hosting a PGA Tour stop every year was not the ambition of the club. It was not a good match. The club and the course really was built as kind of an inland links. It's a very different kind of golf course relative to what a tour course may be in terms of a traditional parkland style. This is more of an inland links. And we thought it was just more appropriate for elite amateur golf. And of course, the U.S. Junior Amateur is as elite as a amateur golf tournament can come. So I think in the future you could see, of course, Trinity Force already has a girls junior amateur coming, and I think you can see more amateur competitions, not only USGA competitions, but amateur competitions of all kinds being conducted there. And if we're successful, maybe one day we will earn our own history and earn the right to host, the biggest golf championships.
Yeah, and that's an interesting contrast because as a PGA Tour stop, it didn't feel like maybe it fit what the tour players, are accustomed to seeing. But then you see last week, and you see those USGA tee markers on the tee boxes, and it kind of fit. I mean, did it present either on TV or just in person the way that you kind of had envisioned it, being the site of a USGA championship?
Yeah, well, every championship has different objectives, right? The USGA, our championships are, designed to be hard, to be difficult, to test every skill. The PGA Tour is more of an entertainment product. Players want to make a lot of birdies. And, that time of year in May that the Byron Nelsons were held, that agronomy was not ideal. Trinity Force was designed to be firm and fast, to have a little summer wind. And, the turf and the grasses just perform a little better once you get into June and July, where that firmness of the fairways and the firmness of the greens kind of stand up more. So I think this past week we got to see Trinity Force as Ben Crenshaw and Bill Cord designed it to be, which was more of an inland links style course, to be firm, fast, the ball's bunks, where you have to use a lot of creativity, you have to use a lot of imagination. There are a lot of obstacles and a lot of ways to move your ball around, and I think you got to see a lot more of that. And of course the USGA and its setup accentuated a lot of that. So we had a better time of year. And I think we had a championship setup team that just understood the architecture and what the goals were. And so I thought it played very well. And that's no slight to the PGA Tour. We were a lot newer when we hosted those two Byron Nelsons. The course was not as mature. And of course the time of year, but also the objectives of the PGA Tour, which is to set the course up in a way for a lot of entertainment versus, a lot of, what the USGA is trying to do, which is an extreme test. So two very different championship objectives, two very different tournament objectives, and we thought Trinity Force was a wonderful test for the players last week.
Let's talk more about your journey in golf. Obviously, being in one of the most powerful positions in the game at the moment.
I don't know about that.
Well, USGA president, that's a very crucial role. But just rewinding a little bit, how did you get into the game? How did you find that love for the game? I guess, how did it hook you early on?
Yeah. Well, I like to tell this story. Long before I was a golfer, golf was changing my life. My mother worked at a club in the summers. And, my first exposure to golf was just the stories she'd bring home from her job. And long before I picked up a golf club, I got to meet some of the members of the club she worked at. And those members helped me go to college. And they literally paid for part of my education. And it was then that, probably for me, I saw golf as, this thing to aspire to, but also this force for good, because it was a force for good in my family's life and in my life personally. But, as a young professional, I just couldn't afford to play golf. I didn't have the time, and I didn't have the, resources required to play. And so it wasn't until later on in my career, when I moved back to Dallas in 2013, that we could afford to join a club, and then my journey began. And really, Trinity Force was where, I went down the rabbit hole of golf. We were hired by the club to actually design and build the clubhouse. We were assisting with the design, but we actually, built the clubhouse. And the main drivers there, Jonas Woods, our club president, was a client of ours, as was AT&T, the main, sponsor. Those were two of our best clients. And they invited me to not only be a part of constructing the buildings, but also leading the club. And, I wanted to learn everything I could about golf. So I started, like any architect would do, I started buying all the golf architecture books, all the history books, and I have hundreds of golf books today. but I just fell in love with the game as I was learning to play the game. And part of what we love most about golf is who golf puts you with. It's the people, it's the camaraderie, it's actually the tests that it gives you as a person. It brings out the best in you. And how a person behaves in golf is how they behave in life. And all of these things were things that were very, congruent with how, I was trying to live my life. But then my friendships in the game just became so rich. And so I get teased a lot from my friends that few people have had a quicker rise in golf. But I think part of it is it's easy to serve what you love. And when you're doing the things you would do anyway with the people you want to do it with, then I think you can be your best. And so I think, it's been a matter of great personal pride that I'm the first Texan to be the president of the USGA. I'm the first black man to be the president of the USGA. And I hope that story actually will create some inspiration in more kids that come from where I come from, but more kids that live where I live. It's very difficult to write the story of American golf without writing the story of Texas golf. So it seems very appropriate that this state that has given so much to the game now has a leader for the game in our country that comes from our state.
Yeah, I feel like every time Scotty wins another major, I got to go back to the count, like how many North Texas golfers have won a major, how many majors have been produced from this area. So such a tradition-rich area. It is kind of fitting, I guess, to have someone in that role. Now let's talk about your journey as a player. I mean, as someone who came to the game a little bit later in life or learned to play it more frequently later in life, what was it like, dealing with the frustrations of golf? I mean, I've played golf a long time, and it still frustrates me every day. Like, what was that like to kind of to get hooked by it, but also deal with the frustrations that golf can bring when you're playing it and struggling or learning to play it? Like, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, well, I think for all of our young people out there, but also, our professionals and folks with great careers or folks with great jobs, I think it's very difficult to have a great life without having recreation in one's life. In other words, there are things we do for a living, and then there are things we do for joy. And both things are really important in your life, and golf is the thing that I do for joy. I think recreation is a very big part of a healthy life. And so golf never frustrated me. When I came into the game, in 2014, I knew it would be hard. Golf is hard, but you know what? Life is hard. And everything you want in your life that's going to be really good for you is going to be difficult. So I approached the game, with that notion that this is going to be something that's going to be difficult, but it's going to be very gratifying. I hired a coach right off the bat, and as a former college athlete, I know what it takes to get better at sports. It takes a lot of hard work. And what I love most about golf is it's on you. There are no teammates to blame. There's no coaches to blame. It's really a test against one's own self. And the biggest test is, can you handle the mental anxiety, and can you handle the emotion? And so for me, I feel like I've worked my way into being a very competent golfer because I enjoy the process. And so many people are caught up with the result. They want to shoot a certain score. They want to achieve a certain handicap. I never got tied to the results. I got tied to the process. And I just figured, when I looked out on those golf courses, I saw a lot of people who did not appear to be better athletes than I was. And I just knew that if I was willing to put my heart and soul into it and work every day, that eventually the results would come. And if I'm in town after work, after I've had a long day at the office, before I go home to my family, golf is integrated into my life. It's not a separate thing from the way I live my life. It is a part of how I live my life. So I hit golf balls every day. I try to have a golf opportunity every day. That's hitting balls for 45 minutes. That might be putting in the backyard. That might be chipping into a net. But every day I want to have a golf club in my hand. And I feel like if I do that for the rest of my life, the results will come. And that would be my advice to new golfers or golfers who are looking to make a step. Get committed to the work, not the results. Because if you do the work, the results often come.
You mentioned the aspect of being an inspiration to both people in Texas, but also as the first black president of the USGA. The phrase "grow the game" gets kind of thrown out there a lot. What does "grow the game" mean to you, and what does it mean to do it in a way that's sustainable for the game,
Yeah.
like especially as you're in your role currently?
Well, I think the United States Golf Association, I take a lot of pride that, we've been responsible for governing the game in the United States for over 130 years. And there's no doubt what keeps people out of golf are two things. One, the lack of access, i.e. I just can't get on a golf course. And two, the resources it takes to play golf, of which cost and time are the two greatest things. So we've been working really hard to open up more access, to build more small places for golf in the community, not asking kids to come to golf, but taking golf to the communities where we have the biggest opportunities. But we also been trying to find ways to defray the cost that it takes to play golf, which is probably one of the main prohibiting facts. So the grow the game phrase is very, slick, and it's thrown around a lot, but I do feel like we have a responsibility and we have an opportunity at the USGA to make sure that all Americans get to interact with that game. And, for me, it's nice to see our winner this past week. He's a drive, chip, and putt kid. 10 years ago, we started drive, chip, and putt, more than 10 years ago, to give young kids inspiration to have a bite-sized opportunity in golf, just to hit some chips and putts and make a drive and to compete amongst themselves, to make it more snackable. And now we have kids who have competed in these competitions showing up at the very top end of the game. So we know that if we get more kids playing golf, that actually, the game of golf will be better, but many lives will be better too. And that is a, personal responsibility that I take as president of USGA, but I think it's something that the USGA is very interested in. And we're not interested in the catchphrases. We're interested in the programs, like Drive, Trip, and Putt, like our national development team, like the Pathways program, which we started this 4 years ago to give underserved kids an opportunity for leadership in golf. We have 50 kids every summer now placed throughout the game of golf so that they can be inspired into the game and that they can be equipped with the skills to go into the community and get more kids from underserved backgrounds playing golf. So it's not about what you want, it's about what you actually do. And I'm really happy that we're doing the things at the USGA that I think will create a bigger game of golf. And that's going to be good for the game, and it's going to be good for a lot of the cities where our games are played.
And it's interesting because the growth of the game, it seems like, is often talked about in terms of PGA Tour versus LIV versus taking the game global. But the USGA's role is much more on the ground and getting, accessibility and affordability, right? Like that's kind of, it seems like two different missions there from the people who throw around the phrase usually, because if growing the game usually equates to dollars for a lot of people, but the USGA kind of has a little bit different mission than that, right?
Yeah, well, we've spent a lot of time, like at the very top of professional golf, there are probably 7,000 men that play golf professionally across the world and maybe 3,000 women. And then if you looked at elite golfers who were competing at elite levels, let's throw in another 20,000. But in the world today, there are over 100 million people that play golf. In the United States, 49 million people identify themselves as golfers. Going into COVID, that number was somewhere around the 30 million mark. So since COVID, since 2020, almost 20 million people have showed up in the game of golf, and they identify themselves as golfers. And the good news is, of that new group of people, half of them are minorities and women. So the very people we've been asking to come to the game are now showing up in the game. And we have to make sure that we are, building places and starting programs that actually make sure those people are welcome and wanted in the game. And so for us, we don't spend a lot of time thinking at the very top of the pyramid, the elite golfers. I mean, professional golf is inspirational to all golfers. But we spend a lot of time thinking about that 10-year-old who's looking for a place to be, who's looking for great role models, who's looking for a game that will actually help him develop the kind of skills that he'll need to be successful in life. We spend more time thinking about that 10-year-old and understanding that if we get the right programs, that we can change that 10-year-old's life. And we know it works because many of our lives have been changed because of this wonderful game.
What were some key moments in your golf journey that made you feel welcome in the game and made you want to keep going and make you feel like, you didn't, you mentioned when you were a kid having that connection with the golfers at the club where your mom worked. What were some of those key moments that made you realize, oh, I could be a part of this too? This isn't just the total 1% of people that are going to be part of this game. What made you really feel like this could be a place for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Everyone who has been important to my golf journey has generally been a middle-aged white man. And from the outside looking in, golf seems so exclusive. Like that wall and that barrier to be included seems so high. And my experience has been, once you get inside the game, once you go through those gates, that what seems so intimidating on the outside is so welcoming and warm inside. So we've got to create more opportunities where the people that live in the community, where those people can be our people, where we can actually find ways for people to connect and spend time together. Because when you start walking the fairways in the game of golf, everything that's different about you just fades away, and our common humanity connects. So for me, I've always felt very included in the game because I gave that intimacy and that connection a chance. And sometimes the journey, for 10,000 miles just starts with one step. So at the USGA, we're spending a lot of time with these little snackable moments where we can get people just to experiment with the game so that they can see that this thing that seems so exclusive and so untouchable actually is pretty warm and inviting. And that's been my experience. And I hope that we can have as many kids of all backgrounds. This is not just about inspiring black and brown kids into golf. This is also about inspiring the kid at home who might be a young white kid who might be feeling lonely and not included. This is about including all of us, because when we find ways for all of us to come together as Americans, our cities get better, our communities get better, and our lives get better too. And I know of nothing in this country, not our churches, not our companies, not our universities. I know of nothing that has the potential to bring us together the way golf does. And that's why we get so fired up about including more people in the game, because it is a game that truly we believe can build a better country and build a better world.
A few quick ones before we let you go here. What does a day in the life look like for you, especially in the USGA role, but also as a CEO here? Like, what does kind of your daily life look like?
Well, one thing I get a lot of that question, how can you be the CEO of Beck and the president of the USGA? Well, I don't view the work I do as separate things. I think your work is how you take your talent and skills, the things you've been blessed with, and the things that people have poured into you. How do you take those talents and give them back to the world in a way that is productive? And so my work at Beck certainly is how I earn a paycheck, but my work at the USGA is an opportunity to actually invest some goodness back into the world. And the more we do over here, the better it gets over here. And so for me, a day in the life could be, a 1 hour call for Beck, a 1 hour call for the USGA. It could be traveling for the USGA today and traveling for Beck tomorrow. It's highly integrated because my two eyes create one sight. And it's very difficult to separate those things. So if I'm at a championship and it's in a different town and we have a client in that town, I may invite the client to walk the course. If I'm going to a different city to do some Beck work, but I have some golf friends there that I need to see, I may invite them for lunch. The two things are very integrated for me. And it's like a flywheel in terms of a productive life. Because at the end of the day, people will not talk about what we got. People will talk about what we gave. And I feel like my role at Beck is an opportunity to serve and to lead and to give back to this community that's given so much to me. And my opportunity at the USGA is the same. And the two things feel very good because I spend no energy separating them. And so the work that you do should take you closer to the life that you want. And my work at Beck and my work at the USGA certainly has taken me closer to the people that I love and the life that I always thought I would want.
You mentioned going down the golf architecture rabbit hole a little bit, which can be quite the rabbit hole. But as someone with an architecture background, how has that shaped kind of your view of golf course design, what you like in a golf course, how you see a golf course? Like what are some of your tenets of how you view golf course architecture over these last 10 years or so?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have 3 degrees in design, 3 degrees in architecture, and the principles of golf course architecture are very similar to the principles of building architecture. So for me, there was such congruency the day I got into the game because I understood a lot of the architecture principles because I had been trained as an architect. So scale, proportion, rhythm, procession, sight lines, all of the devices that architects use for buildings, they also use for golf courses. But more importantly, the construction techniques that we employ in golf courses are very similar to the construction techniques that we employ in buildings. So I feel like that gave me a real, step change, a kind of trampoline ahead, because the kind of concepts that we were working on while we were building Trinity Forest were the exact things that I did every day. But then I started to understand like the difference in each phase of architectural life in golf course. And that's what really became enticing for me, because great design always has traces of the past. And so if we look at the role that St. Andrews played in creating the courses in the Heathland in England, and then we looked at the Heathland courses like Sunningdale and the role that they played in creating the first great American courses. You literally can see when you go to Pine Valley, Sunningdale, and you can see Seth Rayner's impact on our modern game today. And you can see that the greatest, the first great golf courses built in the United States were all templates of holes from Scotland and Ireland. And this is very exciting because you start to understand the architectural concepts and the way that the architect meant for you to play the holes and what the tripwires were. And all of that kind of engages you in the game a little bit more. But great design always follows a recipe. And part of that recipe is, are you being authentic to the story you're telling? And so for me, it's it's a gift to have had a formal education in architecture, and then to experience all of this great golf architecture. And people always say, well, will you want to design a golf course yourself? And I don't have that desire. I just enjoy understanding the principles and hopefully using those principles as a little bit of a playing advantage. Yeah. If you're playing a McKinsey course, like he uses what we call in design trompe-l'oeil, like he's trying to fool your eye. He uses force perspective to make things seem further than they are. And you need to know that, when you're playing his courses. He uses a lot of sneaky bunkering, things that you can't see, what we might call camouflage. You need to know that. And so it's just, it's for me, having the actual intellectual understanding of what the architect is doing hopefully helps me with my athletic understanding of what I need to do, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, seeing Brook Hollow too, with the Tillinghast design that they restored a few years ago, that great hazard bunker on 15
absolutely.
Was incredible. The scale of it,
Yeah.
And for those kids to be able to play a course like that, I mean, that's probably
well,
cool.
when you see the architecture of Brook Hollow, you're reminded about the designer Tillinghast, and that Tillinghast actually worked for Harry S. Colt, and that Harry S. Colt was the architect at Sunningdale. And that Sunningdale took a lot of its Heathland inspiration from St. Andrews. So when you go to Brook Hollow, you're literally getting to experience that entire 500 legacy of design at Brook Hollow. And Tiger came up to me and he said, "Oh, how do we have such a great course here in the middle of Dallas that no one knows about?" And I said, it's our Texas Wingfoot, but in many ways it's our Texas Sunningdale, and the connection between A.W. Tillinghast and Harry S. Colt, the secretary of Sunningdale, who then trained Tillinghast, who both worked on Pine Valley, and now we have Brook Hollow, and you can see Sunningdale and Pine Valley in Brook Hollow, and that's what makes golf architecture so wonderful, because if you understand the concepts and you understand the devices, but you also understand the history, I think it makes it a little more enjoyable.
The Pine Valley connection is also another thing that people, I don't think anyone would have a clue if they don't get out there and kind of see it for themselves. Last question, as USGA president, you're in a time where the golf rollback is coming. How do you think the rollback is going to change? I mean, we know how it's going to maybe change the game at the professional level, but in terms of bringing, you mentioned the history of design and courses and playing these courses like the original architects intended to play. I mean, I think that's some of the goal of the rollback. What do you see the rollback and how it can make the game better or change the game? I mean, when it does go into effect here in a couple of years.
Yeah, well, when I talk about extreme distances in golf, sometimes as the folks responsible for governing the game, it may seem like we have a problem with the great athletes today who hit the ball so far. And I always like to start this conversation by saying everyone has done their job that has created the result of this extreme distance. The equipment manufacturers have done their job. They are manufacturing better equipment at higher levels of technical excellence with better materials that are producing more extreme distances. The athletes have done their job. They all looked at Tiger Woods and they got bigger, faster, stronger, and they have diets and nutrition, and they've become better athletes. And so you look across the PGA Tour or any professional tour today relative to 30 years ago, the athletes look like better athletes. The agronomy has done its job. Turf today is better, more resilient, can be mown tighter, and therefore accentuates more extreme speeds. So everyone has done their job that has produced the result of these extreme distances in golf. But we who are responsible for governing and for thinking about the game 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we now need to do our job. And it is irresponsible to continue to consume more and more land and make the game more and more time consuming and more expensive. It's literally irresponsible not to address this issue. It would be similar to tearing down Yankee Stadium because we lack the courage to regulate the flight of baseballs. It would be like tearing down, Fenway Park because we'd like baseball players to use aluminum bats. Every sport has to deal with modern changes to its game. And when the conditions change, we have to change. Now, there is no doubt that athletes who can swing at extreme speeds based on the modern construction of this golf ball gets a trampoline effect. In other words, a golf ball today, when struck with extreme speeds, and I'm talking about speeds over 120 miles per hour, they get an exponential distance input that the regular golfer doesn't get. And so we're building these big golf courses to accommodate a very small group of golfers. And yet everyone has to bear the expense. And so at the same time that we're trying to include more people, and the barrier on that inclusion is time that it takes and cost that it takes, we have to address what's baking more time and cost into the game, which is this extreme distance. We've been studying this issue for over 10 years. We've had an 8-year process which has involved all of the stakeholders. The PGA Tour, the PGA of America, the R&A, the USGA, all of our stakeholders have had a seat at the table. And we've made compromises. But we now have a solution that will be implemented in 2028 and 2030. And it is a moral issue, but it is also an issue that deals with the sustainability of the game. And so I like to come back to the point, everyone has done their job, and now we're doing our job, because we do not believe that these wonderful golf courses should be made obsolete because we lack the courage to regulate equipment.
And it is, and again, the last question here, but it's very much, I think, was a polarizing issue, but USGA tests drivers all the time. I mean, if a driver gets too hot, it has to be taken out of play. I mean, other sports have equipment standards and regulations all the time. Why do you think this specific issue became such a flashpoint?
Yeah, I think there are economics at risk. And there are stakeholders that have real economic interests in no change. And I respect that. They're doing their job. I'm a CEO, I'm a capitalist, and I understand that you have to protect your interests. But we are looking across everyone's interests. And so I do think that there is a little bit of a fear being baked because change is always tough. But I would remind the golfing public that the golf ball has continuously changed over the last 100 years. This solid core hard case ball has only been played for 25 years. So the golf ball has, the balata, the feathery. I mean, the golf ball technology continues to change, and yet the game has not changed. And so I feel like this is one of those things where there's a lot of fear, because no golfer I know wants to hit the ball less far. But I have to remind everyone, particularly the 99.99% of golfers who do not swing at extreme 120 mile per hour speeds, that not much will change with the flight of their golf ball. And so I feel like the fear is probably just the fear of the unknown. And once we get on the other side of this change, I think it would be much to do about nothing. And we're confident that the manufacturers are so good at these new specifications that they will make even better balls that conform to the rules of golf, but that do not stress the natural resources and the time that it takes to play the game. And so, we think this is a very important issue to address at this time. And I'm very proud that the leaders who are involved all across the game are rising to the occasion to address something that I think will keep the game healthy and strong, not only for our kids, but for our kids' kids. And I hope 100 years from now, when all of us are gone, people are still enjoying, championships at courses like Brook Hollow, and that those do not become pitch and putts or, par 3 courses essentially, because we failed to do what was required in our time.